Hey, pardon the kind of rough look here. I did a went on my lunch break today, and I haven't had a chance to kind of fresh up. I sent you guys an assignment about that I really think you will enjoy. I want you to think about what's your word today. What's your word today? What's our purpose? What's our focus? And how we are going to work together to be stronger and better. So while you're thinking about all of that, let's talk a little bit about developing other parts of New England other than Massachusetts Bay. So we know Massachusetts Bay had a very strict Puritan background. And so, with that, there are going to be some people who aren't very happy. One in particular is a Puritan minister who was sent to Boston by the name of Roger Williams, and he gets kicked out for several reasons. He didn't believe everything they were teaching. He thought that the government owed an apology and money to the Native Americans to compensate for what they had done. He felt like they were treated horribly, and he didn't believe that only predestined people could be saved, that salvation was for everybody. So he gets kicked out of Rhode Island. And also, he gets kicked out of Massachusetts Bay, and he goes and he forms his own colony, which is Rhode Island. There are two very significant things are going to happen in Rhode Island. One, they recognize the rights of the natives, and two, they allowed Catholic, Jews, and Quakers to worship freely. So pretty much, very much against the political establishment, very much against the religious base. So also another person who is not going to find favor in Massachusetts Bay is going to be a lady named Anne Hutchinson. She questioned Puritan authority. She said it should be faith, not deeds, for salvation. She did not believe it was based on your outer works, but based on your inner beliefs. And so she held her own against the clergy, if you remember our class discussion about old Anne, but she ends up getting banished to Rhode Island, doesn't make it there very well. In fact, she ends up dying. She was pregnant, lots of kids, husband, and after a while they get attacked by Native Americans and they die. Of course, the Puritans who believed in predestination kind of felt like, well, it's kind of what happens. So let's talk about Connecticut. Not a lot to know about Connecticut for our purposes. A reverend by the name of Thomas Hooker, not that Hooker, led a large group of Boston Puritans into the valley there, and he is going to found Hartford, Connecticut. Not to be confused with, of course, General Hooker in the Civil War, who is why hookers are called hookers. Okay, so New Hampshire. New Hampshire is the last colony. New Hampshire is the last colony to be founded in North Carolina. It was part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. King Charles made a royal colony in 1679. The Halfway Covenant from the 1660s from non-conversion. What happened here basically is baptism was offered to people who were only partial church members because it was a whole, like you had to have this huge experience to become converted. And so they were also given more rights like votes, as well as their kids could be baptized because remember, the road to hell is paved with the skulls of unbaptized children. So that was a big deal here. The New England Confederacy. This group agrees to defend each other against the natives because you see from 1643 to 1684, there's going to be some problems that are going to develop. You're going to begin to see conflicts here. And with this group, they start to fight against the natives because the natives feel, my gosh, they took our land. That's wrong. And so they're like, yeah, well, maybe we did, but we're not paying you. So sorry, it's ours now. As you can imagine, that doesn't go over very well. And so the New England Confederation is an agreement to defend each other against the natives. This lasted from 1643 until 1684. Their most famous success, though, was a fight called King Philip's War. King Philip was a Wampanoag, Wampanoag, Native American. His real name was Metacom. They named him King Philip, kind of making fun of King Philip of Spain. And he basically, they're going to manage after quite some fighting to overtake him. He is going to keep attacking the colonists, but they do manage to organize and prevail against him, and they actually do kill King Philip. The Restoration colonies, what we're going to see happen after Charles II, comes back to the throne. Oliver Cromwell is going to be overthrown. And when he is overthrown, Charles is going to return. And so, with the return of Charles, you're going to see some changes. And one of those is going to result in seeing these new colonies are going to arise, particularly in the Carolinas. Now, we know South Carolina is the place to be. Rice, indigo, which means large plantations, which means large numbers of what? You guessed it, slavery. This is where slavery is really going to take off in the US. Now, there have been some slaves in Jamestown, we know that, but indentured servants were the bigger thing. But South Carolina, that is going to be where slavery really takes off because of those big, more expensive crops that were being grown and the need for additional labor. And so they went with stolen labor. There you go. North Carolina. Farmers from Virginia and New England are going to establish small tobacco farms in North Carolina. Now, this place had a reputation of being the sewer, if you will, because a lot of unhappy people are going to go to North Carolina. Democracy was there, though. They had a voice. They also were autonomous from Britain. Britain did not rule them. And so that's a good thing. They also had more religious freedom than the other Southern colonies. In New York, Charles II, again, is back on the throne, Oliver Cromwell overthrown. He is going to want to get New York from the Dutch. And so he sends in his brother, the Duke of York. Speaking of English, did anybody see that number two in line for the throne actually has the virus right now? Charles, if I saw that correctly this morning when I was trying not to look at the news. So, yeah, prayers for him. Hopefully that goes okay. But anyway, so Charles II wants to get New York out of the hands of the Dutch. So he approaches his brother, the Duke of York, and the Duke of York is going to negotiate this, and then they're going to tax the crap out of New York. And so the people begin to cry taxation without representation. Yeah, they're not happy. And so what they're going to do is they're going to back off. They allow a representative assembly. And so we do see some changes of their voices being heard. All right, New Jersey. New York was split because it was too big, basically. And so they're going to sell much of that property to the Quakers. Pennsylvania and Delaware, Quakers became known as the Society of Friends. William Penn was given a huge land grant. In fact, the term Philadelphia actually means city of brotherly love. It was a holy experiment. They advertised. One of their things is going to be kind treatment of the Native Americans. Another thing that they're going to talk about is this everybody gets an opportunity. It's very well set out, and they really do all these things. It is a very appealing place to be, and it goes from not existing till the city of Philadelphia being the fourth largest city in the colonial world in a very short period of time. Now, Delaware, 1702, Penn is going to grant the lower three counties of Pennsylvania their own assembly. They will be their own separate colony, but they're really closely tied to Pennsylvania. Just a little revolutionary soldier. See how he had to take an old uniform and modify it? Yeah, okay. So, anyway, good times. Georgia. Georgia is going to be the 13th and final colony. It's actually added in the 1700s by a guy named James Oglethorpe. James wanted it to be a refuge for debtors, and he actually said, hey, this is great because it can be a protection for South Carolina. You know, it can be this buffer zone to keep South Carolina and the Spanish colony of Florida separated. That's the goal. And so he starts this, but it doesn't go so hot. So in 1752, it actually becomes a royal colony taken over by the crown, and the plantation method is adopted. Thumbs down, which means lots of slaves, lots of crops, all of the things that are going to become defining, unfortunately, of what our society is going to be. So speaking about our society, let's talk about mercantilism. It's like merchantilism on the end. This is the trade with all colonies. Things like the colonies, we could only trade basically, the colonies could only trade with the English pretty much. All goods had to pass through England. These were all navigation acts. There was a list of goods that could only be sold to England, explicitly. And so that list was called the enumerated list. Now, here's the thing though. Even though these navigation acts passed in the 16 and 1700s, nobody's really enforcing them. And in fact, New England is just flourishing because of all the smuggling they're doing around it. So it wasn't done very well. 1684, Massachusetts Bay Colony actually gets in trouble for smuggling so much. So they're making a killing, but it is what it is. They're doing it illegally. All right. So what's going to happen? Let's talk a little bit about slavery. As the more heavy to grow crops, the more valuable crops are going to be grown, the demand is going to increase. 1641, Maryland is going to be the first colony that, no, Massachusetts recognizes slavery in 1641 in one of their ordinances when it talks about how to fairly treat slaves. It also said, it was the first time that it was mentioned, white women could not marry black men. It established principles of racism and slavery that our country is going to fight slavery for 200 years and racism for, well, we're still working on that one. The Maryland Act of Toleration is another one we want to mention here. So, the Maryland Act of Toleration, who was it designed to protect? If you said Catholics, you got it correct. Maryland was founded as a Catholic colony, and so it wanted to protect the Catholics. Although the Maryland Act of Toleration said you could be any religion as long as what? As long as you worshiped God. So as long as you worshiped God and worship Jesus, then you could be any religion you wanted to be and live in Maryland. Now, we know that basically means any Catholic or Protestant religion. Not good for atheists, not good for Jews, not good for natives. But still, this is improvement because people in England are losing their heads over being on the wrong side of that grid. All right, another question for you. All right, so answer on your own. Who was Bacon? If you said something along the lines of a Virginia farmer who is going to start a rebellion to overthrow the things that farmers are wanting in the Virginia colony, then you're correct. Okay, so speaking of that, what does he want? If you said marriageable women, if you said the Indians to keep kicking the crap out of any land they're given because it's horrible land and it's out on Indian territory. If you said government protection against the natives so they can acquire land or anything in those ballparks, you're ready to go. Who opposed Bacon? He was opposed by the Crown, particularly Governor Berkeley. Governor Berkeley is going to lead the resistance towards him. All right. So, because of this and other problems, what kind of well, it was before this, but what kind of colony did the Virginia colony, which had been a proprietary colony, have to become? If you said a royal colony, you are spot on. Very good. So, where does Virginia make their money? If you said tobacco, tobacco's the right answer. Good job. All right, very good. And so, where did they sell to what country most of their tobacco? And time. That would be to England. All right, just a couple of quick other ones. What colony was founded for debtors? If you said Georgia by James Oglethorpe, you are correct. And let's see, one more. What colony was the best advertised colony and quickly grew to be the fourth largest city or have the fourth largest city? If you said Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, then you are correct. All right, guys, take care of yourself and just know you are my sunshines. And I hope to see you very soon. Send me those pictures. Bye.